I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thanks for being here. It's our meeting dealing with SAP. This will become a weekly event, but only going to be here in person when we've got an assembly meeting coming on Tuesday. The rest of the time, you can send the information to us via electronic means or however you want to get it to us. But for the time period where we've got a meeting on Tuesday and the same meeting, I do want to have a Friday in-session meeting. Let's go around the table and identify ourselves for the record. Mike, we'll start with you.
Internal Audit, Mike Chadwick.
Ron Hasman, Purchasing.
Holman Thurn, Deputy Municipal Manager.
Mike Abbott, City Manager.
Felix Rivera.
Suzanne LaFrance.
Dick Traney. Amy, you online? I was told Amy was going to be into it. Anyway, Alden, so tell us how great we're doing, how soon it'll go on. Have you turned the plug on?
Saving money, working hard every day, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Well, you know, when we look at the remarkable job he's done and the administration's done with what you guys inherited, had you guys done it originally when the implementers, we would have had
Don't
this thing up
jinx
and
us,
running.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm not, I'm
That's
just
where we
telling
are in this
you.
project management. scheme
Where we
here.
were was terrible.
We are not breaking mirrors. We're not walking under ladders. We are. There is no stupid thing we will not try to keep this thing on project.
And the first
Good.
comments I make, and I make every single time, is that the Muni staff have been going through just yeoman's work. And I still would recommend anybody, anytime you're coming in and out of the building, to stop in 155, the old assembly room, and just see the hard work and dedication. People working nights, weekends for long periods of time. And I can guarantee, you know, the project is where it's at only because of the many Muni employees who have put in ungodly hours in order to get it to this point, and we'll be doing that, for the foreseeable future as well. Even when we go live, they'll be probably, still trying to fix the system and do their regular job. So there's no, go live is not an end, it's actually a beginning. So I want everybody to kind of think about that, but whatever can be done to support the efforts they have undertaken, please do that, because they have been, and this is not only the MOA, but the employees from the utilities as well have been very dedicated to this project. And actually, nobody more wants to have the system go live than them, who've been working on it, some of them 6-7 years now. So please be able to do that.
Tomorrow morning, on what is likely to be one of the nicer days of the summer, there'll be a dozen Muni employees and probably more than a dozen consultants downstairs in the building, in the lab, finishing up SIT 3. And that speaks to the commitment.
Dedication.
Just mentioning. I will not be one of them. I will take credit.
Is there
for what
salmon
I'm
out there
doing.
with your name on it
I
or
will
something?
I will not be the guy there.
So I'm just going to go through quickly. Like I said, I always also say, we are very transparent. I look at this every day. You've seen them before. You've seen
Hi,
them
Pete.
again, so you know exactly where we're at. We don't hide anything. So I'm glad you have that opportunity. So I'm just going to kind of refer to a couple of critical slides that I think show where we're at right now. And I know Mike might have a few comments to make later on about how we're going through for the next week or two. But where we're currently standing right now.
For the record, we've been added by Pete Peterson's joined us. Sorry, Alden, go ahead.
Pete? Oh, you already got one?
Yeah.
Hand them out. So on slide 2, which, as you remember, we have 2 sections, Philo and HCM. Philo is our finance and logistics, the ones that we've been really working on heavily right now. On slide 2, we have started every scenario, which is good, since this is the last day of, technically, of SIT 2. We should have started them all by now. So whenever there's a light blue line above a dark blue line, that's always a good thing. So we have started that. On page 3, this is the one that we're probably watching more than anything else. These are the number of test cases that we have to be able to get through. As you can see, we're a little bit under the line. We are going to be working this weekend to be able to do that. We're finishing up some FERC and some month-end things today, and a few additional items on the weekend here. I believe SRM has gone through, or will have been told, they will have finished all of their running their scripts as of today. So that has been a challenge for us, and through a lot of effort on Joel and Ron's direction as well, they've been able to really hammer down, including, I think, running the ECM component of SRM, which is something that's been kind of waiting to the end here. So SRM is, from Ron, your perspective, looking pretty decent right now compared to what it's been in the past?
SRM is further than we have ever been before. It is, as Alden said, we are running our last test script today. The test scripts have been, I would just say, fairly successful. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, we should be ready to go.
Good.
So we're making good progress there, and some of these test scripts are not passed because they're defects, as you know. We'll get to those as we go through. Next week is our time that we're going to be focused on defects. So it's okay to at least as long as we've executed and identified the defect, we still have some time here to be able to fix those, and that's going to be next week's activity. But we want to make sure we get through everything as fast as we can. On page 4 is our scenarios, as we talked about. That's the end-to-end processes, and a lot of that's mainly dealt on running all their scripts as well as fixing the defects. You cannot have a full scenario run unless everything is perfect. So we're still fighting to be able to do that, but we're expecting to get through those, and those numbers will change once we get the defects that are attributed to those particular areas dealt with next week. For
the record, we've added Mr. Whittleton to the meeting. Go ahead, sir.
Need a copy or do you want me to? Okay. On page 5 is our HCM slide. You can see we're right where we want to be as far as starting the scenarios. On page 6 is where the test scripts were above the line. We will finish all of our scripts in time on HCM. We have had multiple rounds of HCM testing, so this is kind of a third time through for many of these things. On page 7 is the scenarios that we're talking about here. They are working this weekend. Many of the red line shows all the work that's actually been accomplished. So we've actually got a lot of work that's been done. But the light blue line is way down there on the bottom, and that's because we wait until everything is done before payroll does their very end. So they're working this weekend to try to get through all of their items and be able to get caught up. Very important part, however, is payroll has been another core area along with SRM that we've had some conversations with. So we actually took 2 days this week, Tuesday and Wednesday, and did not do anything with regards to this. And we had the team sit in there with the consultants, and they actually went end to end, which was we brought it, we hired an employee, we posted a position, we made the employees clock in, we ran them through CATs, we processed payroll, we checked to make sure that the accounts were hit with those funds. So we spent 2 whole half days with that entire team in there to try to make sure the integration points are all there. You might have noticed on the as you walk in by the elevator, the new clocks are being hung. They've got the nice little do not touch ones. I think Mike has told me he's been around the municipality and has seen them in many other areas. So those are the new Calva clocks, and we're actively working to make sure that they're going to be ready in time. It was what I've heard from the payroll department, who had some, wanted to see it from end to end. It was a successful thing, and it really allowed them to see how the process went from beginning to end. So I would say that was successful as well, and we're going to get some more additional feedback from them here shortly. On page 8 here, these are the real ones that we're certainly definitely watching closely. These are our level 1 and level 2 defects. Currently, about the same number of defects are resolved on a daily basis as ones that are created. So we're kind of balancing. So once we end testing here and then are able to focus on break fix next week with no new ones coming in, those numbers should go down. These are the ones that are critical and high, so we really are focused on these to make sure that these are something that we can get through and be able to deal with. The next page is getting kind of tiny here, page 9. This is the defects that are all between level 1 and 4 that are in the SAP consultant hands. This has grown a little bit as we've been trying to focus to get through here. The key column actually is the column that's kind of in pink there now with some of those pink fields. That shows how many days that particular defect has been out there. If we've had a defect that's been out there for many, many, many days, that's a problem. If you see, most of these are 0, 1, 2s, that means they were brand new. So what that means is we're keeping on top of the defects and resolving them, and the new ones that just come up are just kind of offsetting that. So
How about the one that's got 15 on it?
there are a couple here that have been out there. I've been dealing with some that were in the 50s, so 15 doesn't look too bad. That particular one is on the development. I would tell you though, if you look at it, he has been told to focus on level 1s and 2s. Both those numbers are 3s, so not a core area for one of our development leads to be able to be focused on. So that's why those 2 there are mediums. Those are a 3. So once he gets his 1s and 2s out of the way, I'm sure he'll focus more on getting those resolved. But these are actually this is what I look at, not necessarily the quantity, but how fast they turn them over. And once we stop the spigot from creating them, then they can fix on doing these particular things. Page 10 is actually the municipal one's responsibilities, and we've never been in the teens for the last, I don't know how many months. So we actually are doing very well, not only in being able to keep up with testing, but also with reducing that quantity. And if you notice, 10 of them are even available for retesting. So it would not take too much once they can focus on those efforts next week to be able to go through those. And as you can see, many of those are in that same 0 to 1, 2 category. Joel has the 3 there in the pink, but remember, he's been focused on trying to get through all of his once he has an opportunity to get some time. And you can also see those are 3s and 4s. So he's focused on getting through the high priority items right now. But I'm absolutely confident we'll be able to deal with those next week when they're just fixated on those. Just as far as comments on the next several pages, we kind of bleed through these pretty quickly, but security has gone up. If you look at the graph, that's the role mapping where people have access to certain things. There has been a spike there, so we're trying to address that and provide it. 11 is not a huge number, but compared to what we've historically ran, but we are seeing some of those things, especially as some of these new reports come in. Nobody necessarily, we've never run them before, so nobody needs to know who has access to them. So that's what security is, giving them ability to go out and actually have access to either modules and or reports. And that's what there's tight security to make sure people can't get into things that they're not supposed to and then have problems with. So we have seen a spike there. I've been told that that's pretty common, especially after go live as well, when you have a lot more users who start hitting it, and then they find out they may not have access to something to do their job. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. On page 12, which is the next one, this is kind of a critical one to me. This is the configuration and functionality of the system. And if you notice the trend in the graph up there is a downhill slide. So that is pretty good to me, because that means the system is starting to really work and there's less defects in that particular areas. So I like the trending that's on that one. The next one is reports. We are having a fair number of reports that are coming in at the very end of this process because they were not the critical path that we were shooting for. So you saw a downward trend on the graph and then a slight uptick there. But when we can be able to focus on, we actually now have real data that we can be testing, so they're really able to fixate. Remember, reports are not a critical, that's an output. It's not going to stop the system, and we may not have the number or the right total, but reports are not the number one priority that we're looking at. And then just the rest of the categories, we don't need to really go through, but you can see them that they're following. On page 17, these are the deferred reports that we've had out there. You can see via the green that we are making progress on those. They've only actually been in process for maybe 3 or 4 weeks now. And some of them are actually even being tested right now. I didn't actually think that many of these were going to be done for quite a while. So we've made some pretty good progress on these, and we'll incorporate as many as we can in advance of go live, and then the development of all these will be done before or after, when go live happens, and then we can filter those in as we go. And then I always put this slide in. This is the Zig slide just because Zig always talks about it. We are making progress on CAFR. It is not one of those post-go-live things that we're going to have to worry about that he kept drumming up. We are making progress there, and you can see as we move across on the green there on each individual report. We are actually bringing another resource on who's going to help out not only with CAFR but in a few other finance areas starting Monday. So we're going to expect even better progress as we progress through this through these things. So. Testing is going along. We're making progress. People are working very hard, We are gonna work this weekend heavily on the testing sides of it, and then we'll focus 7 days on break fix next week and try to make sure that that happens, and then bring everything in that we could be able to do that.
For those colleagues that were with us when we started off, we're going to be meeting every other week. In other words, next Friday, we're going to get electronically. The Friday after that, because it's a meeting, then we'll meet in session here. That way the administration get done what they need to do. We get the information we want. We're not tying up their time. So I appreciate you meeting with us today. Mike, you've got a comment, sir?
Well, I just, this would be a good time to take a chance to answer any questions you have about the sort of the metrics on sort of the project status that Alden presented.
Question from some members. Yes, Felix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Zig made apparent to us at the last meeting that we should be worried about two things, and so you'll probably hear me ask this question a lot. So, can you confirm that by, I guess it's by the 11th, that we're going to be good on payroll and purchasing things and services?
Okay, so Ron spoke to purchasing earlier, and obviously I think we can assure you that we have gone through all the scripts, certainly by then, and we will have all the defects resolved on that by next Friday. I feel pretty confident with the number of days that we have left on that. And as I mentioned on the payroll thing, we did 2 days. I am following up with the payroll director to make sure of her comfort factor. She's been absent for a little bit here, but I did speak with her staff, and they seem comfortable. They do have a lot of work this weekend on validations, but they have gone through them before and have been successful, and I'm expecting good progress on them this weekend, and then us resolving any defects on those as well. And then, as I mentioned, we're circling back around on the clocks to make sure that they're working as designed. And remember, we also have IVR and computer clocking in as well. So I know they've done a variety of different tests on those.
Okay, more than I wanted.
Anything
Thank
else
you.
from assembly members? Yes,
So to
Suzanne.
follow up, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rivera's question about the discussion last week. In terms of the decision to go live, what is the date then that decision will be made?
That's what I'll talk about in a second.
Oh, okay. The second part I was going to ask is, do these metrics support, which I'm assuming that decision is yes, there's nothing that has come up from this that you've identified as a potential jeopardy.
As we stand here right now, I mean, we have a lot of work still to do. And we're going through testing, and some of these things may not have been tested multiple times. So we certainly are paying attention to every one of those things, and we've certainly resourced ourselves up in the greatest effort possible to make sure that if something were to come up, we've got the resources available to try to deal with it. And we are marching towards our deliverables and where we're trying to meet. So at this point, we have not had any, there's not a deal breaker that I'm aware of, and we're going to try to do everything possible to make sure that doesn't happen.
Good, Suzanne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my follow-up question to that would be, there has been a lot of concern about the truncated testing period, particularly since that puts, I assume, some of the defect fixes into the operational mode of the project, which means, of course, they're going to book, there's a potential for overtime if staff are working, or additional unforecasted contract costs that may put some significant pressure on this year's budget. And I realize, Mr. Abbott, this may be something you'll be addressing in your part. So my question would be, do we have a plan for dealing, well, have we identified the extent of those potential upward pressures on the budget, and do we have a plan for how we're going to pay for that?
Okay, and I'll take that one.
Okay.
So we are anticipating that there will be some work after go live that will be required either to fix things that didn't work as expected, or to make improvements that we had hoped to be able to fund but could not fund during the initial rollout of the project. The funding that you all have supported includes a little bit more than $500,000 of what we are calling post-go live support from SAP. So we have banked, for want of a better term, consultant time that's $600,000, I think, worth, something like that.
The Zoll's operating budget, which has post-go life support in it, has over $1.3 million in post-go life support to handle these type of critical responsibilities. Because we've talked about this in the past, you can't do post-go life support with capital money. So it was budgeted and approved last year by the assembly. So that money is out there, and there's currently a team of people working to identify all the consultants that need to be here and how long we need them to be a part of the project after we go live.
So we will have consulting resources, and if needed, and you may be right, we will fund what's necessary of staff time to support the project as well. So I'm hopeful that it's more about enhancing the system than it is about fixing it, but there is resources available to support the project after a go-live date. And then, speaking of go-live, every day is a go-live day, is a go-live decision point or a not go-live decision point. As Alden mentioned before, we haven't yet seen something that will be a deal breaker. We've sort of set August 11th up as a somewhat arbitrary date. It's a month before our HCM part of the process goes live. And it's when the SIT 3 and the associated break fix is concluded. It's a week from today. SIT 3 ends today, really ends Sunday, because Monday is the start of the next phase. And then we have another 5 to 7 days, this coming Monday through the following Sunday, to complete the break fix. At that point, our system is essentially locked. We will have the system that we have. And then from then on, it's going to be about loading the data into it, perfecting that data, and making sure it's ready to go. So that when we do go live for the payroll and ER functions on September 11th, we're all ready to go for that. So on or about sometime between the 11th and the 14th, the mayor will convene the executive steering committee, and we will review the progress to date. And unless we see some reason why we can't, we will plan to go live with the payroll and ER systems on the 11th of September, and the rest of the finance and logistics systems on the 2nd or 1st of October. The 2nd is the first Monday, so not much will happen on October 1, but technically that's when it'll fire up. So in a way, every day is a go live day, and every day is a not go live day. So the critical path items are to complete the testing and the break fix over the next 10 days, basically, from now through next Sunday. That appears to be on track. That's most of what Alden just described to you. The next big challenge is making sure that we get the data into the system successfully. That means taking all the PeopleSoft data and dumping it into SAP, and then all of the other data streams that we have, because over the last 20-something years, we have created lots and lots of separate databases and separate systems to handle FILO information that PeopleSoft either couldn't happen or we chose not to use in PeopleSoft. All of that will be in SAP ultimately, hopefully on or around October 2nd. So there's another several weeks of data loading that goes on. And that should not challenge the ability of the payroll system to go online, but it will with the FILO piece. And we have struggled with data
since the
8
beginning.
months. Right. It is something that SAP sort of helped us underestimate the resources required to deal with and the complexity of it. And so we've made a lot of progress. We're continuing to, but we have that 3-week data loading process. And that will be the next big project challenge.
Miss Amy.
Will be to get through that. And
Hold on.
we are making what I believe are extraordinary steps to make sure that we do,
Yeah.
but it has been a challenge in the past, and it may be a challenge again. And then that takes us into the middle of September, and again, assuming we haven't had problems, our employees will be punching in and out on different time clocks, and supervisors will be approving leave and approving pay time cards through a different system, and people will start getting paid through SAP for work performed after the 11th of November, or 11th of September, sorry. And then by October 1, we'll be writing checks, buying, doing all the accounting work associated with that in SAP.
Hello, Chris.
So that was a long way of saying that the 11th of August is an important date, but to a certain extent, every day is an important date when we're this far away. As Karen Norsworthy, our ER director, likes to tell us, I think there's now about 23 work days left before September 11th. From the ER's perspective, that's her big day. And that's the level of focus that there is in terms of how tight these timelines are becoming. But, knock on wood, we're making it. So that's where we are today.
Thank you, sir. Pete?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not to change the subject, but I was wondering how are we doing on our employee training? Are we keeping up with that? Are we catching up with that schedule? Or?
Well, we are doing ESSMS training, which is the group, the training has to go all 3,000 employees. It started last Friday. They've been doing, I know, training sessions this week. We saw metrics during our FSC yesterday, and it showed, they've trained probably almost 200 people already. And my memory was 120 of them said it was really, really good, and then it kind of smears out as you go through. But we're hitting it hot and heavy, and ESSMSS over the next several weeks is going to be many, many hundreds of people being trained as we go through. Towards the third or fourth week of this month is when all the other training from the other classes, purchasing, accounting, some of those start filtering in at that point in time. And currently, it looks like we're on schedule to have the courses completed. It is a challenge a little bit for us, where you're using muni employees to do the training, and it's not a skill set that a lot of people have. So, we're working with each one of them who would volunteer to try to be able to do that. We'll have some rough patches through there, but we are on track at least to have our courses developed and ready to be offered. And I know the scheduling. In fact, Mike and I got an email request to go to our ESSMS training next Friday. It happens to be our date. So training is going along, and there's a tremendous amount of work there, and we're going to get as many employees through as we possibly can.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yes, Suzanne.
How's the training for IT employees going? I recall from the last meeting, there are maybe 3 who will be dedicated to SAP support.
Well, there's 3, I think, positions that are just, that's what they do as SAP, but the many people in the IT department will be doing pieces or dealing with pieces of the system, which is in California right now. So we've been working on knowledge transfer and trying to ensure there's as much cross-training between the SAP resources and that we have on the project itself. But as another point there, we have an AMS contract with SAP right now, which provides a lot of those extra support things that we may need if we don't have the skill set to be able to do that. So they are trying to take those knowledge transfer and cross-training opportunities where possible. But we are going to rely heavily on, at least for the foreseeable future, on the IT expertise of outside individuals to make sure the system is working the way it's supposed to be and upgraded in accordance with normal policies. But the staff is certainly working on creating it and having those opportunities. But you could always use more. I mean,
Sure.
that SAP is something that none of them have really worked in before, and you have to basically get in and do it in order to be able to get that experience to have.
And follow-up question?
Yeah, quickly, we got to
Okay.
go to our next meeting.
And that said, that support cost, which will be additional contracting, that is budgeted.
Well, there's a contract for it, but through the budgeting process, it's always appropriated year by year by the assembly. So As you see the budgets from the different ones coming in October, the IT budget would have anything that's in there that's associated with that, and those are decisions and questions that you'll be able to ask. We have a contract with SAP.
But the short answer is only through 2017.
Okay,
We don't have any operating budgets yet for 2018.
great.
Well, this meeting's with, thanks for being here. Next one will start in about a minute on Vera.